Hi everyone, I hope you are all well. Now that you're writing more and more paragraphs and you've started writing performance tasks, it's a good idea to revise linkers. So, in this presentation, we are going to remember them. Let's start. In order to write smooth-running paragraphs, you need to understand the relationship between the sentences and phrases. So, let's look at these sentences and phrases and try to understand the relationships between them. I slept well last night. I feel very energetic today. What happens when you sleep well last night? You feel energetic the next day. In other words, this is the expected result. This is what happens. This is what is supposed to happen when you sleep well. Now let's look at the second one. I slept well last night. I feel very tired today. Is this what's expected when you sleep well? No. So this is not the expected result. This is the unexpected result. Let's look at the next one. I slept well last night. I have a long day at work today. I have a long day at work today. That's why I slept well last night. In other words, this is the reason. Finally, I slept well last night. I have to work late today. Or I will work late today. In other words, this is the purpose why I slept well last night. Let's look at another example. She earns a lot of money. She's very unhappy. Are people unhappy when they earn a lot of money? No. So this is the unexpected result. She earns a lot of money. She has a good job. Why can she earn a lot of money? She has a good job. So this is the reason. She earns a lot of money. Have a good life. She wants to have a good life. That's why she earns a lot of money. So this is the purpose. Finally, she goes on holiday 3 times a year, and she can do this because she earns a lot of money. In other words, this is the expected result. Now, let's look at which linkers we need to use in order to connect these sentences and phrases. I slept well last night. Very tired today. Remember, this is the unexpected result. When there is an unexpected result, we can use but. However, although, even though, but we need to be careful with punctuation. Please notice that when we use but, we put a comma before it and we use lowercase b, and it comes in the middle of the sentence. You can use however after a full stop or a semicolon and a comma after it, and it comes in the middle of the 2 sentences. When we use although, we can use it at the beginning of a sentence or in the middle of a sentence, but there is a comma after the first clause when we use although at the beginning. Even though is exactly the same as although. Let's look at more examples on unexpected results. She earns a lot of money. She is very unhappy. We can join it with but, however, although, and even though. Now, let's look at the punctuation rules for unexpected result linkers. When although or even though come in the middle of the sentence, there are no commas. When they come at the beginning of a sentence, there is a comma after the first clause. Now let's look at the next one. He didn't study enough, so he couldn't pass the exam. Although he didn't study enough, he passed the exam. In the first sentence, he couldn't pass the exam. This is expected result of not studying. If you don't study, you don't pass the exam. So this is the expected result. In the second one, he didn't study enough. He still passed the exam, surprisingly. So this is the unexpected result. Now let's look at the next set of linkers. I worked until midnight last night. I'm very tired today. What happens when you work until midnight? You feel tired the next day. So this is the expected result. When we want to give the expected result, we can use so or therefore. But their punctuation rules are different. Let's look at the punctuation rules for expected result linkers. When we use so, we put a comma before it and we use lowercase s. When we use therefore, we can put a full stop before it, use capital T and put a comma after it. Or we can use therefore with a semicolon, but in this case use a lowercase t and put a comma after it. Now let's look at the next set of linkers. I worked until midnight last night. I'm very tired today. This can also be the reason. Why do I feel tired today? Because I worked until midnight last night. You can also use because at the beginning of the first clause. Because I worked until midnight last night, comma, I'm very tired today. Again, be careful with the punctuation rules. I watched TV last night because my favorite program was on. When we use because before the reason in the middle of the sentence, there are no commas and we use a lowercase b. When we use because at the beginning of the sentence, we use a capital B and put a comma at the end of the first clause. Now let's look at the next linker. You should cancel your credit cards. Stop getting into more debt. Why should you cancel your credit cards? Because you want to stop getting into more debt. This is the purpose of canceling your credit cards. When we want to give the purpose, we use in order to or to. They are the same. You can use in order to in the middle of a sentence or at the beginning of a sentence with a comma after the first clause. But there is something we need to be very careful about. After in order to or to, there is always a verb 1. There is no subject. In order to stop getting into more debt. Now let's look at the punctuation rules for in order to. When we use in order to in the middle, we start with a lowercase I or lowercase t, and there are no commas. When we use them at the beginning of a sentence, we start with a capital letter and then put a comma after the first clause. Now let's look at the next linker. You should find a better job. You can earn more money. This is the desired outcome. In other words, this is what the speaker wants to happen. In this case, we use so that. You should find a better job so that you can earn more money. Can we use so that at the beginning of a sentence? No, it only comes in the middle. So that is similar to in order to, but there's a big difference in the grammar structure. Remember, after in order to or to, we start with a verb. However, after so that, there is always a clause. In other words, you is the subject, can earn is the verb, and more money is the object. Sometimes there's an object, sometimes you don't need to use an object, but there has to be a clause after so that. Now let's look at the next linker. She can buy things from cheaper shops. She can find some very good second-hand shops for everyday items. What is the relationship between these two sentences? It's adding ideas. When we add ideas, we can use and or moreover. However, the punctuation is again different. She can buy new things from cheaper shops, and she can find some very good second-hand shops for everyday items. As you can see, when we use and, it's always in the middle of the sentence. There's a comma before it, and we use lowercase a. When we use moreover, we can use it after a full stop, and there is a comma after it. We can also use it after a semicolon. However, in this case, we have to use a lowercase m, and there is a comma after moreover. Well, that's all for now. Now, please do the linkers exercise assigned to you. I hope this was helpful. Have a nice day.